Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Artbox Academy podcast. My name is Lauren Dennis. I'm beyond thrilled to welcome our guest, Karen Tankoff.
Thank you for having me.
Who has had decades of phenomenal success in the film industry, working with the Walt Disney Animation Studios. So usually I don't look down at a list because this is a very organic and natural conversation, but Karen's accomplishments and influence globally on all of us has been astonishing. So Karen has been involved with the following films: Tangled, Winnie the Pooh, the Academy Award nominated Wreck-It Ralph and Moana, favorites of many of us, Big Hero 6, Zootopia, and one of the biggest of them all, Frozen. So in that sentence is phenomenal creativity. Karen also has worked closely with the Academy Award-winning director and phenomenal Robert Redford, who we are all missing. His impact has been phenomenal with Wildwood, and you were an executive producer with The Horse Whisperer, and you were the producer, correct, for Motorcycle Diaries?
One of them, yeah.
One of the producers, involved with Legends of Bagger Vance. And now Karen works now as an independent producer and consultant globally, working on, I'm sure, amazing projects. So welcome, Karen.
Thank
Truly.
you. Thanks for having me.
I am so happy you're here. Our platform, as you know, is the power of creativity, and you represent that to the nth degree. Can you remember when you were 5 or 7 or very young, were there any early experiences that showed you that you had something, or did you know you even had a creative, like a very, very creative mind?
I like doing things. I like making things.
Okay.
You know, I used to, I'd work in the garage with my grandfather, nailing things together. And girls weren't really supposed to do carpentry or whatever, but I just liked hanging out with my grandfather.
Right.
And it was well, he's making things. There was nothing here, and now there's a table.
Making something
out
from
of
nothing.
And so the idea of that you could just take scraps of wood and make a sailboat or whatever it was that, your 5-year-old mind
Right.
thought was glorious and important,
Right.
Without judgment and without self-consciousness, was super important. And I, throughout childhood, loved storytelling. I would make puppets. I would do all that kind of thing. And I found that as I got older and the pressure of college started to come in, I found that there's a kind of a societal squeeze to try to not be that way. And through college, I was well, I'll try to be a corporate lawyer. I would have been a terrible corporate lawyer. And that, eventually I had to sort of reclaim, the idea that it's okay to pursue a profession that's not obvious and doesn't have an obvious path.
Right, that isn't so linear.
That isn't linear.
So outcome-oriented. Did you have a creative household?
I would say my mother encouraged us creatively. Mm-hmm. My father is a PhD in electrical engineering.
Okay.
I think he would say that rules are really awesome.
Right.
And math is really awesome. And those things are true. He also encouraged us creatively. It's not like he's against creativity, but I don't think he feels, sort of unbridled right brain activity is perhaps his forte.
And your father is so brilliant in what he does.
Yes, he is very, very brilliant.
Yes.
And I think that they both did a lot of encouraging curiosity. And I think that creativity and curiosity have a lot in common. And they can manifest in just different ways. You can be curious. Science is incredibly creative.
Exactly.
And so as an engineer, even though my dad might not call it creative, it is in fact creative.
Yeah. And we want the most creative engineers, the most creative scientists, physicians.
We have plenty of problems that need to be solved by
Correct.
people thinking in ways that are new, innovative, and unexpected.
We need that across every genre, every industry, every age.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And then what did you study in college?
I was a history major.
How did history then turn into
this?
Something
it's interesting.
Yes. It takes
history
years.
To me, what really struck me out is some amazing professors. I was always interested in storytelling, but the idea of history as narrative story told from different perspectives is, I think, what drew me towards storytelling rather than the usual. I mean, I could have been an English major, but I think history particularly had that sense of narrative to me that was newfound and unexpected.
Right. And after school, did you boldly get involved with something that led you to film?
I boldly got involved with not going to law school.
Very good. A blessing.
Yes. I was unprepared to take the LSAT and realized I would have been a terrible lawyer. It was really, I'm dating myself, but it was the beginning of the independent film world and film movement. And I had, I grew up going to movies at the mall, and we just,
like many of us.
Yeah, that was just kind of what was programmed for us, and it was fine. And the idea that film could have its own narrative perspective also, and that it could be individual stories and personal perspectives. And, Steven Soderbergh had made Sex, Lies, and Videotape before I was in college, just for anyone doing the math.
Yes.
But the idea that stories could be personal and that they could be not just prescriptive and formulaic and, just sort of demographically representative to try to get people into theaters, that they could reach smaller audiences and resonate in different ways than traditional Hollywood films had in my high school years and before that. And I love some of those big Hollywood movies.
Yes.
No shade on them, but for me, the idea that, that world seemed impossible to me. Like, I didn't know anybody in Hollywood. I didn't, but the idea of possibly being able to make smaller films with, friends, colleagues, fellow passionate people, that seemed appealing and potentially accessible. And so I moved to San Francisco after college because, again, LA seemed too
grand.
Too grand.
Yes.
So I moved to San Francisco after and sort of found some documentarians and worked, as an intern and was grateful for that. I mean, any opportunity to sort of be around it and immerse myself in filmmaking and learn by doing. Learn by people who are doing it was felt like a total blessing.
We have found a very common thread with several of our guests that they all jumped in and just went for it and just tried it. Because as an intern, again, you're there on the front line, you're in it. And it's the best way to say if this is something you're passionate about, and it did.
Yes.
It really did. And then regarding these huge blockbusters, is there a beginning? Are you part of that beginning when you're making something from nothing? I mean, we all start with the white paper, whatever it is, whatever project or endeavor you're working on, there is a beginning, and you're in that very beginning state, correct?
There absolutely is a beginning. And when I worked in the development, which is really the front stage of a movie, and as practiced at Walt Disney Animation, which was run by the same creative founders as Pixar at the time, John Lasseter and Ed Catmull, they did a great thing. They really had it was very director driven, and our job was to support the directors. And the directors, they would say, just give me 3 ideas. And the ideas would be simple as a one-word thing. You could say,
Would it be in a round table? Would it?
Initially, it would be just a meeting. And
is it like a brainstorming?
Yeah. So they'd say, like, I want to do, I'm making this up. But it's something like, I want to do a movie about skiing, and I want to do a movie about Ferris wheels, and I want to do a movie about, name one more thing, rock climbing.
Right.
Maybe John would say, 2 of those seem, maybe this was too much like that, this was too much like that. Why don't you go with that your third idea and start run with that and take it to kind of the next. What would that be like? Would you do something about Ferris wheels? What would that? Is it an amusement park? What is that? So then we would work with them, the development department with those directors, trying to figure out, well, what is that about?
Right.
Where realistically in the world are these things? And one of the things I loved about that is even though it's animation, which technically cartoons, it was very, very driven by the real world. And famously, John would have people go and do research, and do he had people on Finding Nemo take scuba lessons. So they would know what it's like. So they would know what they're deviating from. And so a lot of the initial development of a film is often really finding out, well, what really happens in our world that is related to this, and where can we deviate from that?
And it takes years, correct?
Years, yes.
So one of the things that we talk about on the podcast is this timeline that is very different for the expectations today. I mean, years for a script, years to figure out that, years. So that's so important regarding, because there aren't mistakes, but you're constantly refining. You are constantly enhancing. The nuances change.
That's part of the reason it takes years, is giving that time for iteration.
Right.
That you have early stage, okay, well, I have these ideas about these characters. Okay, well, that seems a little like that. But what that character seems interesting. Could you, what else can we learn about that character? Well, what else? And asking that what if question. Well, what if that character did this? What if that character did that? And find it sort of a deeper and deeper and deeper understanding of the characters. And then how does that relate to the plot and what they do across time and what themes develop out of that. And so that iterative process of finding a story that's coherent in theme and character and, is a very
That's just the
iterative.
script.
That's just the script, yeah.
So that's not even production and hiring actors and all of the everything.
Right.
So
then it's, then production is its own iterative process. I mean, and that's one of the great things is that each section of a film has its own iterative process. In live action, the same thing is true. You have a screenplay, and then actors do their thing, and then editors do their thing, and then sound people do their thing, and then music people do their thing. And in each of those subsections of, if you're a sound mixer, you're refining your own work over and over as you're doing. If you're an editor, you're refining your own work with the director over and over and over. And that, creativity, at least in my experience, is fundamentally iterative. And I think one of the hardest things as an adult is not expecting perfection the first time out. One of the great things about kids is no 4-year-old says, "Oh, I'm not good at this." Like a 4-year-old just, takes the crayons and goes on the makes the drawing on the placemat. If we're lucky enough
up on
not
the
to
wall.
have an iPad, yeah,
right.
And they're not like, "Oh, I didn't get the hair right." But, they don't have that. The criticism, that self-consciousness of that critical voice, which I think can be really damaging. I mean, it can help in discernment, but can be very damaging.
Yeah. No, we notice in a lot of the Art Box classrooms, and we do workshops, that yes, the 4 and 5s, their creativity is like with abandonment. We love that word, abandonment. And then we start to see as young as, I would say 8 or 9, there is already some critical noise coming in.
Yes.
Where they're correcting and what really struck me, what you just said about a sound mixer, I think of so many young people who love music.
Yes.
And don't know that you can relate that love, passion, and talent to being in the sound industry in film.
Yeah.
That is a massive industry. So then also think of the commercial side, and then you think of all of the composing that takes place for films, that in and of itself. So we always like to share, how can we make some of these interests and passions real world? You can be in the film industry through your passion of music. We have family friends where their boys have been playing drums since they're like 4. And now they're involved with things professionally that they never dreamt, that they're a small little interest.
And one of the great things is these tools are now available and accessible in a way that they weren't to previous generations. They used to be prohibitively expensive if you wanted to record an album.
Right. Yes.
This is now, if you own a laptop now, maybe you need better mics or whatever. I'm not a sound person, but you don't need, you used to have to go to a recording studio that was $10,000 an hour or whatever.
Right.
Some prohibitive amount of money for most artists. And now that's not the case. Great films are shot on iPhones. That's a blessing to have these tools that we're at a time where these things are much more possible.
Right.
You were saying about the kids who at 8 start to get self-conscious, and that I remember my nephew when he was 8, I asked him if there was a certain film that he was going to see, and it was clearly a children's film, and he said, it seems a little kiddish.
Oh,
he
already
like,
knew?
You're 8. Like, you only learned to read like 3 years ago.
Exactly.
But it's like that sense of that aspirational tween thing happens really early.
Very early.
And I think that's, to our creative detriment, generally.
Right. Yeah, when we do some workshops with adults, especially creative workshops or having additional conversations about creativity, the mindset is very rigid. Many say, I haven't thought like this in decades, where there's no mistakes. And research, and we call it tinkering and pondering, that is intentional. You have to go through that. It's part of the creative process. It is not being a failure. It's not being slow. It's not 2 + 2 equals 4.
Right.
I mean, it is a winding road. 10,000 tries and not one of them were a mistake.
That's
something
right.
like that.
That's right.
And that's the approach as an optimal creator in anything. Right.
In any field.
In anything.
I think and it's hard. It's really hard as an adult. I think, there's the famous Picasso quote. I'm sure that's probably come up in your studio here about every child is born an artist. The question is whether, but I think that the discomfort of not knowing like what the next step is or feeling that what you're doing, quote, isn't good, being in that uncomfortable part of being an adult is like avoiding that at all costs, and it's unfortunate.
But it's essential.
It's essential to not avoid it. It's
essential to get through it and go through it. And,
I think as an adult, it's really hard to put oneself in a position of doing things you don't know how to do. So I took a ceramics class. I thought, okay, I'm going to try to do something artistic. I'm going to try to challenge myself. And I get there, I'm like, I'm not good at this. And it's like, well, I don't know how to do it. That's why I'm not good at it. I've never done it before. But to try to weigh out that voice of reasoning, like, you've never done this before.
You've never done it before.
You're learning something new.
Right.
There's no way you would be good at this.
Right.
But to have to talk oneself through that in a way that if you give a child a lump of clay who's 3.
Right. They're at it in a second.
They're not saying like, "Oh, the bowl isn't centered with the,"
Right.
So, and I
my rim is not even.
Yeah, and there's not. It's like, look, mommy, look what I made.
Right.
And I think that it's really to try to whatever we can do to even recover and restore the tiniest amount of that for ourselves is an incredible gift.
Do you have any practices or intentional routines that keep your mind in a place of that play or creativity?
It does not come that naturally, actually. I wish it did. I mean, this is why I talk a lot about what the ways in which we've removed this from ourselves, And I would think about when I'd go visit my nieces and nephew and they'd say, Auntie Karen, come play. And I'd be like, I need to empty the dishwasher.
A task.
It's like, no, you actually don't need. Literally, I flew there to see them, to play with them, and I was like, I'm going to be cleaning the kitchen. It's like to realize, to catch oneself doing that,
right,
and then to choose otherwise.
And what happened when you played with them?
I mean,
it takes a while.
It takes a while
to get into
especially
that.
When they're like, storytelling is my thing, and they'd be like, "Tell me a story," and I'd be like, but that's okay, and to be forgiving to oneself too. It's like I'm expecting myself to tell like a story that's worthy of children's publishing, and it's like they're not expecting that.
They want to hear about a delightful story of someone who went on a walk.
It doesn't matter.
Discovered something.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, I think that. It's really hard that we have an expectation of creativity. I think as we get older, that creativity is supposed to be monetized. Like, I'm not an artist because my work isn't in a gallery or in a museum. I haven't sold. I don't. I'm not. Which I think is the definition of professionalism. I assume is to do something in exchange for money, right?
Yes.
And so the idea that you're not an artist because you're not selling what you do is a very narrow definition. And I was thinking about this. Most people work out to stay healthy because they know you're supposed to keep your body healthy,
need to move.
right? And nobody says, "Oh, I'm not an athlete." You just go to the gym.
Oh, that's interesting.
You go to the gym. You got to do whatever you do. You walk. You do whatever it is. And it's
but we don't label.
We don't label ourselves as like everyone knows you're not going to the Olympics. It's fine,
right?
But we don't hold ourselves to that standard of like apologizing for not being at a very elite level. And it's like in art, if elite is defined as being compensated, okay, then don't be elite.
All that I think about that. Well, hopefully today we're going to change the the narrative.
Let's change that paradigm.
Yeah, let's change the paradigm because I remember too. I went to Otis Parsons for textile design and was involved in the fashion industry and a lot of things before the Art Box Academy. And I remember particularly some people coming up to me and say, "Are you an artist?" And I kept thinking, I would pause. I'm like, well, I haven't sold anything, but I did make that. And now, and I still get asked, and I'm creating every day. I'm not painting at an easel every day, but I'm now, I would say 95%. Let's give 98%, where I can say I'm an artist.
Yes.
And
good.
Yes. But I hear you completely that something happens in all of us as we grow. It's society, it's It's something.
And because we also rightly revere artists who are professional, it's like, oh, I don't want to be a pretender. Like I don't want
Right.
to I don't want to be self-aggrandizing and claim that I'm Picasso.
Right.
It's like Picasso is fine with you not claiming you're Picasso.
Yeah,
He doesn't
exactly.
care. Like
Right.
it's like he's fine.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I think it's hard to, because we label our identities, we think that we can't claim that label as opposed to claiming the behavior.
Right.
Just creating something. Cooking
exactly.
dinner can be creative.
Yeah.
You
right.
might make the same salad
Oh,
you make
see-
every night and decide to do something different.
Right.
And be like, oh, I'm just going to arrange the red bell peppers in this way because look, I think that looks cool.
Oh,
That's creative.
Being a chef, cooking, I mean, if everything has a creative component to it. I always think like there's a furniture designer,
Everything.
everything. We had a lesson in one of our kits where we introduced accessory design, and the students couldn't believe that there are artisans, engineers making sunglasses, baseball caps, shoes. And I said, there's a world of shoe designers. I mean, when you start thinking everything does have a creative.
I just heard about a sunglass designer recently who he makes all of his original frames the first time around in clay.
Yes, that's like the automotive design industry and toy design. So yes, a lot of industries create prototypes with clay.
Which seems like one of the most ancient tools that we have.
Exactly. Since man, it was clay.
Right,
it was
exactly.
clay. And here we are with clay. Yeah. And I feel now with so much of our problems and addiction with screens that we don't have that curiosity. We don't have that sense of
tactile
play,
curiosity.
Kinesthetic learning.
Yeah.
Because when we were younger, it's the classic. We get on our roller skates and our bikes and we go out and we return when it starts to get dark. It's so important, and I hope our listeners and viewers hear that the hands-on learning, get in that experience is just essential.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I mean, and screens make it really hard. It makes it hard for children. It makes it hard for adults.
Right.
They're designed for the dopamine rush, and it's really hard to let go of that. I mean, I find myself so often we go to a restaurant or a bar, and there'll be a screen on where the sound is off. The sound is off. They're showing some like horrible game show or like trashy TV that I have zero interest in, yet I'm completely magnetized by it and glued to it. Like my attention, our attention just wanders. We can't help it.
I know.
And it takes a lot to turn away from it. So it's like,
it's everywhere.
And I think the best we can do, I suppose, is encourage each other.
Support each other.
Because it's like, I'm not so holy. Believe me.
But say, talk to me. Don't look up at that screen.
Yeah.
But it is. I was at a hotel about a week ago for a meeting, and I walked into the main restaurant, and I think there were 11 screens.
Yeah.
11. And I love football, and I love watching it all. But just as our mind was not made to look at 11 different screens in motion, and I think only 3 of them were showing the same thing.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And so I looked a little bit, and then it's just the way I'm wired. I couldn't sit and watch as with everyone. So I left
obviously I make a living putting things on screens.
Yes.
So I'm not entirely.
Do you have to
against
limit
them.
yourself? But you probably have to find that balance.
I think that's the thing. Is like, is it deliberate? Like, am I watching this because I want to be watching this game? Great, that's cool.
Right.
As
Versus
opposed
a passive.
to me or anybody just blindly or just habitually becoming glued to something. And I think for kids, it's particularly hard because it's a tiny device. It's in your pockets, right? But so how do you go outside and, pick up sticks and do all the things that kids have historically done, as we were just saying, globally?
Globally.
How do you create things out of, something out of nothing? Construction paper and Legos and, all those,
I had drawing parties when I was young, and my mom has recently told me, as we were talking about it, that I found some rope in the garage with clothespins and tagged 2 trees, invited all the neighbors over, and we hung up our art.
For your gallery?
For the gallery
Early
in the backyard,
gallerist.
yes.
Fantastic.
Yes, with old, cracked wooden clothespins. And the drawings, we were between 7 and 12 years old. But how proud everyone felt, and like we all had our little clip, and
that's amazing.
So
did you try to sell them to the neighbors?
We did not. I think we were just so excited to have
an
like
early instinct that art need not be monetized.
Right. But just interesting, the thought process, a couple decades ago versus how we play, how we create. I mean, my boys who are, 19 and 23 now, I mean, fortunately, we had a lot of forts in the house.
Big fan of the blanket fort.
Yes, the blanket fort was amazing. I hope they're still being made.
I was an A+ fort designer.
Yeah,
I will let you know.
So much fun. I hope listeners and viewers get your kids to build those forts. You don't know what comes of that. If they become a treehouse designer, which now, is phenomenal on certain television stations. I mean, you never know.
You never know.
You never know. If you had to share 2 nuggets of just a takeaway with our listeners about the importance of creativity or what they can do to bring just a little bit, not at the highest level, just in our family we call it the 0.25, just a little bit more every day. What would you share?
I think the first thing I would say is like to know that everyone has storytelling has been my particular creative thing, but I would say like design, food, any form of expression there's infinite numbers of as we've already talked about. But I think to know that everyone has a story to tell, whatever that is. It doesn't matter, overwhelmed as a parent. And so you probably listen to this thinking, I don't have time to take a ceramics class. That's probably true. Mm-hmm. That's fine.
Right.
But in what you're doing, there is already so much creativity.
Mm-hmm. Creativity does not have to, you don't have to go to a place.
You don't have to go to a place to do it.
Things.
You don't have to, that it can be all of the things you're already doing. First of all, parenting itself it takes enormous creative resources.
Correct.
How to get a child to stop crying. I mean, that's a creative
19
exercise.
ways.
Yeah, there's a place, and that what you're already doing can be creative. Is it that you always serve your salad in a blue bowl, and you decide, what, I think I'm just going to put it in something else today. Because I've seen that a lot, and I just want the table to look different.
It's such a good point.
That you can do that everyone has not only a story to tell, but the
capacity.
The ability and capacity for self-expression.
Right.
I mean, how could we not? We're all individual selves. It is way easier said than done to free yourself of self-criticism around creativity for the reasons we've also discussed.
Right.
I'm not elite. I'm not an artist. I'm not a...
Right.
And that to just be mindful,
even when people say, I'm not a musician, but you play music. Well, you are a musician.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That it doesn't have to mean you're a professional. And I think to free oneself from that negation takes a lot of work.
It takes work.
So if in the 0.25 you say is the one time you find yourself saying, I'm not creative.
I can't.
Or, I'm overwhelmed. I can't. It's like, well, maybe it's like, know that when you're singing a song in the car with your kids,
right,
and you're making up the words to even one verse, don't have to make up a whole song, make up one verse, you're being creative.
Right.
And that not to fault yourself. I think people are also so hard on themselves of expecting a level of perfection.
Correct. Yeah.
Rather than just a marginal
Especially
difference,
now.
as you said.
Yeah.
Just a little marginal difference. What can you allow yourself in what you're already doing? I think to make it, because I think sometimes it's like people think, oh, you have to now, and now I'm going to become an oil
something
painter.
Grand, right?
Yeah.
But the mindset, I'm hearing you, how we speak to ourselves, be very forgiving, know that it takes practice, grit, try again.
I think forgiving is the most important thing. I mean, I was like relentlessly self-critical. And to what end? To what end? All it did was keep me from trying things, like say,
and
I'm not a painter.
But I love that you also mentioned curiosity, because I think that leads to so many platforms.
I think that's the basis. First, the basis of all storytelling is the simple question, what if?
Mm-hmm.
I
love what if.
This, what if this character decided to, whatever it is? Or what if, I made dinner differently? The simple thing. When I was a kid, I always thought it was so awesome the nights that sometimes we'd have breakfast for dinner.
That wasn't that fun.
It seemed like so edgy and and like subversive. Like, ooh, we're having pancakes for dinner. Like,
and they always taste so good at night.
Why is that?
I don't know.
That's a creative choice.
Right.
What if we didn't have the usual?
You know, it's amazing. I mean, I'm literally like very moved by this, that you're making it very approachable in little micro nugget steps, a little package, because the grand thinking, we're surrounded by this very large, impactful, important, little. You're talking little.
Because it's a gift to do it for yourself. And I think a lot of what we talk about monetizing it and professionalism and elite and all that is because you're doing it for a large audience. And then that's all subject to criticism and.
Right.
But if you're lucky to live in a place that has a yard and there's a bush with greens in it or flowers and you clip
Cut
some of
them
those
and you create
and you
some.
put and make a little something.
Right. You're
That's
making it so accessible. Your
a
creativity is accessible.
That's right. And you've done something for yourself, for your environment, for your, for
Your soul.
That's right. For your, for
Yeah.
your well-being. And I think that, we do that with how we choose to eat. Most, people hopefully generally know now you should eat a healthy diet and
Right.
you work out. So I think this is like another component of the same thing. It's for your neurological health. Your creative well-being is a deep part of your neurological, spiritual, emotional well-being. And so to deny that because you're not professional or anything is as self-destructive
Yeah.
as a poor diet or not exercising.
Right. No, and there have been studies that there is a true essence now and a component to the creative well-being. Mm-hmm. But it's, you said, patience, forgiving, I think, to honor how each one of us as an individual, we see the world so differently. But hopefully we can be in that space that we can be like we call our true creative selves, where you find something, you found narratives,
And I think the other thing is it doesn't have to be sustained. I mean, I think sometimes there's the idea of like,
change.
I'm not creative. So it's like, even if you do it for 5 minutes, it's fine. It's, it's sort of, like meditation, we're not going to all go meditate in the forest for 12 hours a day.
Exactly.
It's like, but can you find moments of peace
Right.
that are valuable? Sure you can.
Right.
And so can you find moments of creativity?
It's amazing and so compelling what you've said to break it down. We're all creator. I believe every one of us is born a creator.
Absolutely.
Every one of us. Well, that's a wrap for today's amazing episode, Karen. Thank you so much
Thank you, Lauren.
for being here.
Thank you for what you and the Art Box Academy do and encouraging creativity.
Thank you.
In people of all ages is just a critical communal gift.
I'm very inspired. I really am. I have ideas now that I can do little micro creative.
Please do.
Yeah. And I'll call you and
Please
I'll tell you.
report back.
But thank you all of our listeners and viewers who joined us today. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to like and subscribe. And we're so grateful that you joined us today. And thank you, Karen, again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.